Hi everyone. Welcome to the session 2 of Flutter Kickstart 2022. I'm Sargam Agarwal. I'm a GDSC team member and I'm the facilitator for Flutter Festivals from our campus. And in today's session, we are going to be finally kickstarting with Flutter. I hope in the last session of Dart Essentials of Flutter and the task that all of you were assigned, you were able to understand the essential topics of Dart, right? And so today we are finally going to be rendering something on screen, right? So I'm really excited to take this session up, and I hope you people are going to learn out of it, right? So before we move on, I would like to finally just take some time to make some announcements. Firstly, the sessions for the Flutter Festival are there on our GDS event platform. So make sure you go and register for them like RSVP. A lot of you have been asking that how do we basically join the event and all. So the thing is that firstly, coming onto our platform, that is the GDSC event platform, you'll have to firstly join our platform, or let's say create your account on our platform, and then you have to basically come on these upcoming events area, where you have to basically just go on the particular event for which you would like to register, and simply go onto it. For example, let's go on to the solution challenge one, right? And then over here, you can see you'll get the option to RSVP, right? So you just have to simply click on RSVP. It will basically ask you for your basic details, right? And then you can simply submit it. And you can see that you get this blue button after RSVPing, and that is to join the virtual event here. So you can come back on the day of the event and simply click on this blue button and join the event, right? So now talking about the solution challenge info session, as you can see, make sure to attend the session, as in this session, you'll be basically told everything about the Google Solution Challenge, right? And how you can basically form a team, how you can come up with the problem statement and the solution and all. So a lot of things are going to be told to you in this particular session. And all the events that GDSC Banasthali Vidyapith will be conducting after it, to basically for the solution challenge, will be disclosed in this event only, right? So make sure you do that. And the third quick announcement is that the recruitments for the GDSC or Banasthali Vidyapith is going on right now. And the recruitments are going on only for the first and the second year rights. So make sure you apply for the same, right? So yeah, that's it. Now, let's finally start with our coding, that is the Flutter coding. Okay, so in today's session, we are mainly going to be seeing how to render static screens in Flutter, right? And what we're going to be doing is, we are going to be, let's say, developing a Harry Potter app, right? So I am here in VS Code. I'm going to be using VS Code to code the things up, and I'm going to be launching my app on my browser, right? So as per the installation setup and all, if you have your Android device like configured for debugging, then over here you can see, right? For example, if I just create let's firstly create the Flutter project, then I'll show you. So I'm just going to go into my terminal, right? And I'm just going to increase the font size so it's clearly visible to you all. I hope that much should be fine, or that is too much. Maybe I'll decrease a bit. Okay, it's not decreasing. Just a second. Let me just create the Flutter project. So I'm going to type in the command flutter create, and let's say I name my project Harry Potter app, right? So it's going to create the Flutter project for us in my folder, that is the Flutter Festival projects, right? Okay, so now it's done. So I'm simply going to exit from the terminal, right? And I'm going to exit again. These are some of the terminals that were open. So yeah, now maybe I'm going to decrease it a bit. So I hope like this particular font size is fine. Can anyone just let me know that? Our team, can you please let me know if that much font size is fine? Everyone is able to see it on YouTube. Or should I increase it? Okay, so let me increase it then. Fine. So I hope it is clear. Okay. So now here we are, and you can see that we have created our Flutter project, and you can see all these folders over here, right? So when you are going to be creating your Flutter project, you'll be able to see these many folders. Okay. So we won't be going into the depth of each of these folders, as only some of them are going to be concerning us as of now when we are beginning with things. So first of all, let's move on to the lib folder, which is going to be our main concern. This is where all of our code for Flutter is going to be, right? So if I click on this drop down, and you can see that we have the main.dart file over here, right? So I'm simply going to open this up. And over here, you'll be able to see that there is some pre-rendered code by the Flutter team for us, right? So what this does is, like, if you're going to be running this app, you'll be able to see a counter app working here, okay? And so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to just simply remove this all, because we are going to start from scratch, okay? Great. So now, as I told you in the Dart Essentials itself, that our starting point of the code is going to be the main function in Dart. Like, so what we're going to do is, we are simply going to create the main function, and we are now starting off with the code. So please pay attention, okay? So we are simply going to create the main function. And now what this main function does is, it basically will run our app, okay? So run app, as you can see, just hover upon this, you'll be able to see the error which is giving right now. So it says the function run app isn't defined, okay? So if we go on the quick fix, it itself says that you can import the library, you can import it from the library flutter material.dart, okay? So this run app function comes from this particular package, okay? So that is why we need to import it. Now that error is gone. Now it says one more thing, that one positional argument is expected, but 0 found, right? So as you can understand, that run app is going to basically run our app, right? So we have to basically pass in our app to this particular function, right? But now the thing is that what should be our app in code, right? So for example, in the Dart Essentials session as well, what I told was that every entity of the real world can be basically created in code using class, right? तो आपका जो भी real world entity होता है, right? उसको हम code में कैसे बताते हैं? We use class for it, right? So what we're going to simply say is, we're going to use the keyword class, and let's say I'm going to name my app as Harry Potter app, right? So this basically is a class, Harry Potter app. And now the thing is that this is just a normal class, right? Now, how do I basically tell Flutter that this is something that needs to be rendered on screen, right? And everything in Flutter is a widget, and widget is something that you can render on screen. So how do I tell Flutter that this has to be rendered on screen? Or let's say this is a widget, right? So what we're going to do is, we are going to extend this class from the stateless widget. Do you get this? So let me just correct this spelling right. So you basically extend this class from the stateless widget, which is again coming from this particular package, right? So now what happens is, as we saw in the Dart Essentials session, that we are inheriting from this particular class. So since this is a widget, which is well recognized by Flutter, right? So now your app, that is the class Harry Potter app, also becomes a widget. So now whenever this code is going to run, it will be able to build the widget that we're just going to implement in some time, and then it can be rendered on screen by Flutter, right? So now you can see there's some error over here. So what it's saying is that stateless widget basically has this one build method, okay? So as the name suggests, what does this build method do? This build method will build your widget that has to be rendered on screen, okay? So what I'm going to do is, I'm simply going to take build method, right? And what is this going to return? We know that it returns a widget, right? So I'm simply going to return the widget, right? And I'm just going to surround it with the curly braces, right? And now since this build method is coming from the stateless widget, so we should basically be annotating it with override annotation, okay? This basically makes the code more readable, telling the other developers seeing your code that, okay, fine, this method comes from this particular class, which is stateless widget class, okay? So now you can see that build. Now in the arguments of the build method, you basically get a kind of value which is of type build context. Now you don't have to basically, right now we don't have to go into the depths of this particular thing, okay? We are going to see its significance when it comes to navigation and all, right? It's just that Flutter gives us this, it's just that this Flutter gives us this particular variable or the value. So we are taking it right now, but we won't be using it as of now. Okay. Now you can see that still build is giving some error, and that is because we are not returning anything out of it when we have mentioned that we're going to be returning a widget. So for the timing, I'm simply going to, let's say, return a text widget, right? And in text widget, since there's one positional argument as a string, so I'm going to take that up, right? Now over here in the run app, since my class has been created a bit, although the main implementation is left, I can simply pass in its object, right? So I'm going to say Harry Potter app, right? So that is how we create the object. We could use new keyword. Like if you're coming from C++ or Java, you know that we use new keyword to create the objects, new keyword, and then the name of the class along with this, basically opening and the closing brackets. But you can see that it's giving the warning that unnecessary new keyword, right? So this basically means that new keyword is optional in Dart. And so that is why we can directly write it like this, right? But this simply means that we're creating the object of this particular app, right? And we all know that class is just a blueprint, right, in code. So if we have to use that class, we have to basically actually use it. We have to basically create its object, and that is how it goes, right? So now if we are basically, you can see over here that I'm returning a text widget. And let's say I'm going to say, Harry Potter app, right? So this is giving the blue line again because of the const constructor. So you just hover upon the no errors or wherever it is showing, and then you can see that it says prefer const with the constant constructors. So just quickly go on the quick fix and add this particular value, right, keyword. And then it says one more thing, that use key and widget again. You can simply go on quick fix and do these things as we are beginning right now. So it's perfectly fine that we don't really get into the depths of these things as to why we are taking in keys over here or something like that. Okay, so for the timing, just see what I'm doing, right? Now I'm gonna run this particular app. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna say run without debugging. Okay, and okay, I think it's running something else. Just a second, I'm gonna terminate this process because I think it's running some of my other app. So I'm gonna click on this main.dart, and also over here you can see that it gives an error in the test folder. So just go over here, and you can see that over here it's being created with my app. So you have to basically change it to Harry Potter app. That was your class name now. Okay, and now the error is gone. You can simply save it and the error is gone. Okay, so don't worry about that so much. I just need to see if my Chrome is okay. So over here now you can see that in this blue line, yahan pe, you can see that if I click on this, this is a place where all your devices on which you can potentially launch your app will be available. So I'm going to choose Chrome as of now. And as I said that when you will basically, if you have enabled debugging in your Android device, you'll be able to basically see your Android device listed over here, right? So you can choose that. So now if I go on this main.dart file and I run without debugging, I should be able to see something. Let's see what that has to be, but yeah. So I'm going to go on debug console. This is where everything is going to be coming up. Okay. So it's waiting for the connection right now. I'm going to take some time, but yeah. Okay, so you can see it says Harry Potter app, and let's see what it gives us. Oh, so you can see that this is not something that we are desiring, right? This is a red screen with some yellow text, and that means this is an error, right? So I don't really understand this error, although I can copy paste it on Chrome and I can basically Google it. But you can see that something like root is missing over here, right? You can, if you just go through it, you can understand that there's some kind of widget ancestor, or let's say some root missing over here, right? So I tell you what's the problem. The thing is that in Flutter, before using like the root of your app should be a widget. I'm going to remove this for the timing. It should be a material app. Okay. It should be a material app widget. Okay. Now what this material app does, it basically provides a kind of base, just understand this in very naive way, that it base provide karta hai where you can basically add your functionalities. It provides it is a kind of a widget which will help you to basically deal with certain functionalities or widgets that will help you to build or develop the material design app. Okay, so in the material app, you have this. If you hover upon any class, again, this is a constructor being created. I hope you're not confused with the syntax. This is the constructor being created, that the object being created. And since new keyword is optional in Dart, we are simply going to remove it, right? So that is why we are able to write it directly. Okay, and don't be bothered by these blue lines. Okay, Visual Studio Code is going to just keep giving it to you, but you keep on doing your work. Okay, so now over here you can see that we have this complete implementation, or let's say the documentation of the material app given to us, right? So you can see these are the named parameters. Again, in the Dart Essentials, I took this up, right? So we have these named parameters as they are basically surrounded by these curly braces, right? So now we can see different kind of parameters, which we can basically just give them value pass karke, we can basically render something onto our screen. So one parameter that I can see over here is home parameter, right? And you can see it takes in widget type of value, right? So since it's a named argument, if I have to pass it, how do I do it? I say home, that is the name of the argument for which I'm passing the value, and then colon, and then I have to pass in a widget over here, right? So what I'm going to pass now is a scaffold widget, okay? Now scaffold, again, it's a kind of Canva for your app. Okay, it will lay down a basic layout for your for you as a developer. Like for example, whenever you start developing some आप किसी भी उस पे जाते हो, Canva पे जाते हो या कुछ भी है, आप एक template लेते हो, and then you start editing in that and you start working on that, right? So ऐसे समझ लो कि scaffold is that widget for us, जो कि हमें एक app bar दे देगा, ठीक है? आपको एक white screen दे देगा, आपको एक floating action button वगैरह दे देगा, उसकी functionalities दे देगा, and then you can start basically working with this widget to basically develop your app, right? So it's a kind of basic, again, एक आपको Canva type देता है, template दे देता है, right? So this much of code, that is material app, and then the scaffold. This is like the standard thing, okay? This is something which is going to be constant for you all, right? So now in the scaffold, again, if I hover upon this, you can see that we have various kind of parameters. So we have the app bar, you can see. We have the body. So as per the name suggests, we can understand that body is the place जहाँ पे हमारी screen finally render होगी, ठीक है? So as of now, I'm going to create the app bar, ठीक है? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to pass in the value for it. And since it's a named argument, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take its name, कि हम जिसकी value pass कर रहे हैं. So I'm going to say app bar and then colon, ठीक है? Now I have to provide it a value. So I'm simply going to create the object of the app bar, which comes from Flutter, right? And now, if I simply run it, you can see it's hot reloading or hot restarting, right? And what does this mean is that if I'm going to go now over here, you can see the error is gone, and you can see this app bar, right? There isn't any text over here right now. We'll see to it how we render it. And then you have this white screen, right? So this is coming from scaffold, right? So that is what I was talking about in my first session itself, like hot reload. This is the option for hot reload, and this is for hot restart. So in my IDE, as soon as I press Control S, that is as soon as I save this particular file, it's going to hot reload automatically for me. And what it does is that you can see the changes in the UI in real time. Okay, so what I'm simply going to do is I'm just going to, let's say, have it side by side so that we can see it. Okay, so I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. Okay, so I'm going to be coding over here, and you can see the real-time changes over here. So now in the app bar, if you hover upon it again, you can see that we have one parameter, or let's say again a named argument as title. And again, it takes a widget type, right? So I can understand that, okay, fine, maybe this is something which can be rendered on the app bar. So I'm going to simply say that I'm passing the value for my title argument. So it's title colon. And then I'm going to, basically, I want to pass in a text. Okay? So now you can pass it as a string as well. But since it's going to take in a widget type, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the text widget. And inside this, I'm going to pass in my value of string. For example, I'm going to say Harry Potter app. Right? And I'm going to apply this comma, and then if you save it, you can see it's hot reloaded and the UI changes are visible to you in real time, right? So again, this blue line because of the const. So let me just use this. And again, so it's the same thing. But yeah, you can see this. So you can play around with the app bar. For example, now if I, let's say, want to change the background color. So we can see that we have this. So let's just go through the properties and see what can help us. So we have this elevation, this shadow color doesn't seem to be concerning us right now. Then we have this background color. So I can understand that maybe this is the property that I'm looking for. So I'm simply gonna go over here in the app bar. We have this title, right? And I'm gonna pass in one more argument, that is the background color. And I'm gonna simply take its name, colon, and then I'm gonna say colors dot. And you can see that VS Code is automatically giving us a lot of options. So we have brown, we have deep orange, we have green, indigo, light blue, a lot of them. So let's use, let's say red accent, right? If I save it, you can see the color of the app bar should have been changed, right? And you can see the color of the app bar has changed, right? So it looks pretty good to me, right? So that was all with the app bar. You can play around with a lot with that. Now finally come to the body part of the scaffold and start rendering something, okay? So this is where scaffold is, and this is where app bar ends. So we are gonna go after this because we have to pass in a value to the scaffold. So we are gonna now pass in the value to its body parameter. And in the body, you can see that again, in the documentation, it takes in a widget, right? So now if I pass in a text widget, let's say, and I say, or let's say, hi, right? Second, I say, hi, random text. And then I give it a comma, and then I save it. You should be able to see this text over here, right? I don't know if you're able to, so I'm just gonna increase it, right? So you can see below the app bar, right? So let me just get back, okay? So that's pretty cool. Now, if I want to add an image, then what we can do, right? So let's say I want to have the text as well as the image, right? So now body takes in only one widget, right? And we are required to render, let's say, 2 or more widgets. Then how do we do it, right? So for that, obviously, firstly, we understand one thing, that if we have to render 2 or more widgets, they need to be in some relative order. That is, either they need to be vertically aligned, or they need to be horizontally aligned, or they need to be like, कुछ तो उनका relative order है अपने आप से, right? So I'm going to be using basically what I want to do is I want to render an image over here, right, of one of the characters from Harry Potter, and over here I want to render one of the famous dialogues, right? So what do you think can be the widget to render it in a row, right, in Flutter? So obviously it has to be a row. So I'm going to simply use the row widget, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this for the time being, right? I'm going to use the row widget, right? And in the row widget, you can see that we have this children argument, right? Which is again a named argument, and it takes in the list of widgets. So you can understand that these list of widgets are going to be rendered in a row, right? And we have to pass those widgets as children to this particular constructor or object, right? So I'm going to say we are passing the value for children, so children colon. Since we are using the list, and so we use these square brackets, and within this, I'm going to basically pass in my widgets. Now I want to basically add the image and then the text, right? So now since I want the image, what I'm going to do is, let me just close this for the time being, and we have to basically add the images to our project because I'm going to be using image.asset, okay? So let me create the asset folder over here firstly, okay? Not inside the lib folder, just skip this, right? Inside the Harry Potter, right? And over here, I'm gonna create the assets folder, right? Now inside this assets folder, I want my images. So I'm gonna go on my downloads really quick. Where is it? Right? And I'm gonna grab these ones, okay? These 3 you can see. And I'm simply gonna drag them in and basically drop them in the assets folder. So you can see we have this in the assets folder, right? And let me just get rid of this really quick, right? Now we have these images over here, you can see, okay? So these are pretty cool. Now we have to basically go to our pubspec.yml file. This is like over here, you can see pubspec.yml file, right? And over here, you can see that pubspec.yml file is basically for you to add all the kind of dependencies of your projects, okay? So I'm gonna go here, and you can see over here the commented part, that to add the assets to your application, add an assets section like this, right? So if you have the assets, so I'm just going to simply comment this out, right? So we are going to leave this as it is. And then over here, I'm going to basically add the location, or let's say the path of my images or the assets that I want to add. So I'm simply going to remove this, and I'm going to say it's in the assets folder in my project. And since I want all of them, I'm simply going to, I need not basically write every single file name, right? You can simply do this, and I think it should be fine, right? So it will automatically take in everything present in this particular folder. Then if you save it, it's just going to do something. And then I think we can now go and use our images. So now returning back to the main.dart file, to render the image using the asset, right? What constructor are we going to use? We can use the image.asset constructor. Okay. And now you can see that image.asset basically takes in one positional argument. Can you see? It's a positional argument, and that means it is required, right? So it takes in a string of name. That simply means that what is the file name in your project, jiski image aapko yahan pe render karni hai. So let's say I want to render that of Harry. So I'm going to say Harry dot, and if I go in my assets folder, you can see it's Harry.jpg, right? So I'm going to write that in over here, right? Comma, and then again, after the image, I want to render my text. So text mein, I'm going to type in its most famous, one of the most famous the dialogue, right? So I'm just going to close these, and I'm going to go on my data file really quick, right? Okay, there we are. And I have the dialogue, and there we are, right? I hope you remember all this dialogue of Harry's, and I'm going to paste it over here, right? Again, this is for const, so let me do this, and then don't forget to add the commas. And then over here as well, I'm going to add the comma. Commas basically help for indentation in your code, which is a good thing. And then if I save it, let's go and see to it. You'll be able to see that the image is rendered, right? But there is these lines, like which yellow pe black lines, right? So what is this? This is basically saying कि overflow हो रहा है, right? That simply means कि आपको कुछ ऐसा part है इस particular widget का जो visible नहीं है, right? And you can see the error over here. A render flex overflowed by 577 pixels on the right. Right? So that is what it means. So why is it happening? What we can do, we can simply go in our image.asset class, or let's say constructor, and I'm going to give it a height and width as well. So I'm going to say height, and I'm going to say, let's say 100, and also width, and I'm going to say 100, right? So let me see it in real. So I'm, before saving, going to just have it side by side. Okay. And let me just close this much. Okay. Okay, so now if I basically just save this particular file, you'll be able to see it's much better now, right? We have our image, and then we have the one of the famous dialogues of Harry in a row, right? So I'll just increase. You should be able to see this. Can you see it? It looks beautiful to me, right? So now I want to do that for other characters as well, right? And also one more thing we can see over here is that you text here. This is very much, you know, the stick hai matlab aapki image se. So what we can do is, after the image, like in between the image and the text widget, we can use a sized box widget, right? Which helps us to add space. So now since we want a horizontal space, we are going to be using width. So we are going to be passing some value of width. So let's say I'm going to pass the value of 15, right? And then see it. That okay, fine. And again, this is a kind of const thing. So let me just do this. If I save it, you should be able to see this space in between now, right? I hope you are able to see that, right? So now you can see there's this space, right? Cool. So that was all about the first row that we had, right? But obviously we want more characters. So what we can do is we can simply, let's say, just cut, copy, paste, or let's say copy, paste this particular piece of code again and again. So what I'm saying is, let me just remove this and get me this, right? So what I'm saying is that we can basically copy this copy this particular piece of code and paste it again, right? 3 times, one for Harry, one for Hermione, and then one for Ron, right? So, but we have to render this in column, right? And body takes only one widget. So we will have to wrap it around a column, right? So let's do this. So I'm going to right click on the row and I'm going to say refactor. And I want to wrap this with a widget, right? And I'm going to say the column widget. Okay. And now you can see it's giving the error because column takes in children as the argument and not child, right? And since it's children, it needs to be within the list. So I'm simply going to go again over here, I guess, right? Okay. So I have wrapped this around a particular list that is with the square brackets, right? Now within this only, what I can do is I can simply take this piece of code and paste it again, right? And then again do this, right? And now what I have to do is I have to just change these values for Hermione and for Ron, right? And so let me just see what was the name of my file. It was hermione.jpg. So I'm going to change that. Okay. Okay. And then it's dialogue. So I have the dialogues over here. So there we are for Hermione, right? So let's grab it. I'm going to go over here and then I'm simply going to say this. A lot of things going on in VS Code. I know it might be not that readable, but I had to increase the font size so that it's clear to you. So, right. Then we have Ron, which is again ron.jpg, right? And then it's dialogue, and its dialogue is why spiders, why couldn't we follow the butterflies? How many of you remember this dialogue of Ron? I do. Right, so I'm simply going to back, and this is Ron, right? And I'm going to replace the dialogue, right? And again, I'm going to just get it side by side once again. And now if I save this, you should be able to see this. Can you see this? Right? And it looks very cool to me, right? So if I just maximize this particular page, you should be able to see this, right? So how do you like it? Unfortunately, we are not on Meet, but it's okay. I hope you're liking it, right? So let's get back. Okay, again, that's the problem, that some part of the UI is basically aapka screen ke bahar ja raha hai and you're not able to access it, right? So now that we have rendered it in column, you could see this, that it was a column, and in column we rendered these 3 rows, right? So this is the nesting of the rows and the columns, right? So I hope that was clear. Now you tell me that, for example, I'm going to copy paste this again, and I'm going to grab these 3 things again, and I'm going to copy paste it. Okay, again, so as to create a long list, right? And then again, let's say, and then now if I save it, you should be able to see, even if I maximize it, that we are not able to access a part of the UI, right? Why? Because column will render everything in a column, but it won't make it scrollable for you, right? So the added functionality that we want over here is to make it scrollable. Do you understand this? So for that, what we're going to be using is, we should be using a single child scroll view widget, or we can use a list view widget, right? So instead of the column, I'm simply going to replace this with the list view widget, right? And now if I save it, so you should be able to see that now the overflow is only from the right side, right? And now you can easily scroll through it. Can you see this, right? So when I was rendering my first app, and I could see everything working and being rendered on screen, I was seriously just jumping, right? And this is, I think, very cool, right? So I hope until now, everything is clear, right? So let me just maximize this, right? So as of now, we have learned how to basically deal with the text widget, how to basically work with rows and the columns and the images as well. There is one more widget, one more way to basically render image, and that is image.network using the image.network constructor. So if I just have to walk you through the documentations as well, thoda sa, so that you have an idea. So I'm just going to go over here. Let's say I'm going to say image class in Flutter, right? You should just basically refer to the docs a lot, right? So I'm going to go on image class, and you should be able to see firstly a small description of the image class. Ki karta kya hai widget. Again, it's a widget. Every widget in Flutter is a class in code, right? We all know that. And on the right, you can see a complete kind of a quick navigation for yourself, right? So you can see all these kind of things, and you can simply see to it, read through it, right? And there you go with the lot of constructors that we have for the image, right? So we have like image.asset that we just now used. Then we have the image.network as well. So it simply means कि आप एक URL लोगे, ठीक है? And URL से you basically display the image, right? So इसमें क्या होता है कि आपका internet connection अगर नहीं होगा, so किस आपके user का, so they won't be able to see the image, right? So for example, आपने देखा होगा कभी-कभी कि अगर आप Insta use कर रहे हो कभी भी, कोई भी ऐसा app use कर रहे हो and मतलब उसमें इमेज रेंडर नहीं होती है, राइट? सो डेफिनेटली वो जो यूआरएल है वो आपका लेट्स से कहीं पे स्टोर्ड है, राइट? एंड यू हैव टू फेच दैट ओवर द इंटरनेट, राइट? सो अभी जब हम फायरबेस फायर स्टोरी पढ़ेंगे तो उसमें विल सी टू इट कि वहाँ पे इमेज का यूआरएल कैसे स्टोर होता है, देन वी फेच इट फ्रॉम देयर, राइट? So that is what image.network says, right? And then you have certain properties. For example, you have the color, you have the height and the image and a lot of things. So widgets are worth being explored a lot, and this is where you can explore it, ठीक है? So for example, I told you कि भाई क्या scene है, ठीक है? इसका height का and fit का and इन सब का क्या है? So if you want to check them out, obviously you should be coming to the doc. उनके बारे में पढ़ो. For example, you can just simply click on this and you can understand कि क्या कर रहा है ये property, right? So one thing that you should be able to understand till now is कि how Flutter coding is working is that everything is nested, right? We are simply just creating the objects of the classes that are basically given to us by Flutter, and फिर वो कुछ by default कुछ properties set होती हैं उनकी, जैसे हमने ऐप बार में देखा था कि उसकी property color जो था background color that was blue in color, right? Now if I want to customize that widget, obviously which I have to as per my own requirements of the app. So how do we do that? We basically do that by passing in the values to the parameters when creating the object of that particular class. That is what we are doing. यहाँ पे हमने object बनाया. This much is the object creation of app bar. And उसको हमने customize कैसे किया? हमने argument के तौर पे customize किया, right? We pass in the color. We pass in the value of the background color, right? Similarly, title को कैसे बताया हमें क्या करना है? We pass in the text widget along with the string that we have to render. Are you getting this? So that is how we are doing. And if you see this, material app यहाँ से start है, ठीक है? And material app is basically ending over here. Can you see this? तो ये जितना भी कोड हुआ है ना, ये इतना बड़ा बड़ा जो हम कोड देख रहे हैं इतना सारा, ये पूरा का पूरा कोड एक कंस्ट्रक्टर के अंदर हुआ है. Can you मतलब believe it? मतलब ये मेरे लिए काफी न्यू था एंड आई वाज लाइक वाओ, मतलब पूरा का पूरा कोड जो हमारा हो रहा है वो एक कंस्ट्रक्टर के अंदर हो रहा है, ठीक है? इट इज नॉट लाइक अलग से लाइंस चल रही है, अलग से कोई फंक्शन है. कंस्ट्रक्टर के अंदर यू आर बेसिकली जस्ट कॉलिंग अ लॉट ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्टर्स. आपने मटेरियल ऐप के अंदर स्कैफोल्ड को कॉल किया, देन स्कैफोल्ड के अंदर ऐप बार को, देन ऐप बार के अंदर यू कॉल इन द टेक्स्ट का कंस्ट्रक्टर, राइट? सो दैट इज हाउ द फ्लटर कोडिंग वर्क्स. ओके, सो आई होप दैट वाज क्लियर, राइट? So that's it. Like if we have any doubts, then we can take them up. I hope now you are basically confident enough and you'll be able to render something on screen. Like you can, if I just tell you कि बस ये text render करो या ये image render करो, you should be able to do this now, right? There are a lot more widgets, obviously, and we are going to give them to you in task. And as I said that the teachers have some inherent property that we do give you out of syllabus, right? So I have not touched upon some widgets that you're going to be getting in your tasks, right? So that's it. Do we have any way of taking up the doubts, team? If somebody can just drop it in the team. Okay, so that was it for today's session, people. Thank you so much for joining in, and really sorry for the inconvenience that we are having with the platform. Like after the session of Dart Essentials as well, the lead and I basically tested that particular platform and it worked just fine then. But again, today it was giving the error. So from next time onwards, we'll see to it if we are going to continue with YouTube Live only, or we'll see to it if we can have it on Meet. Right. So yeah, thank you so much for joining in, and I hope you learned a lot out of this session. If you have any doubts, you can just obviously ping me right on the server. So yeah, and don't forget to basically RSVP for all the events out there, right? So thank you, and